Some moments change everything. One missed exit on the interstate. One sudden downpour that turns a dirt road to soup. It's one heartbeat where your eyes lock and neither of you looks away. My name is Eli, and this is the story of how I got lost in the Cascades with my best friend Rowan, and found the thing I'd spent 6 years pretending I wasn't looking for. They say the mountains don't care what you believe about yourself. You just keep standing there, ancient and indifferent, until the altitude and the silence and the thin, cold air scrape away every lie you ever told. I should have known that weekend would break me open. The warning signs were screaming. I was just too good at covering my ears. Come on, Eli. Daylight's wasting. Rowan Hale's voice carried across the empty trailhead lot the way it always did. Half laugh, half command, impossible to ignore. He was leaning against the hood of his beat-up Subaru, arms crossed, wearing that crooked grin that had gotten me into trouble since we were 22. 6 years of shared apartments, concert tickets, 2 a.m. diner runs, and one unspoken rule: don't look too long. Don't think too hard. Don't ruin it. Rowan had the kind of face that made strangers start conversations in grocery lines. Coffee shops, gas stations in the middle of nowhere. Dark blonde hair, always a little too long, green eyes that looked gold when the sun hit them right, and a constellation of freckles across his nose that showed up every summer like clockwork. I had memorized every single one of them, and then punished myself for it later. I slammed the hatchback shut and shouldered my pack. I'd some of us like to be sure we won't die of exposure, Hale. He pushed off the car and sauntered over, bumping my shoulder with his. Please, I've got the first aid kit, the water filter, and 2 entire bags of gummy worms. We're basically professionals. You brought gummy worms instead of real food? Priorities, Eli. He flashed that grin again, and my stomach did the thing it always did. I ignored it the way I ignored overdue bills and the little voice that asked why. I still hadn't managed to stay interested in anyone I dated for more than 3 months. We were attempting the Enchantment's Traverse. 19 miles of brutal elevation through alpine lakes the color of glacier melt and granite spires sharp enough to cut clouds. October meant fewer crowds, golden larch trees, and the very real possibility of snow. The forecast had been optimistic. High pressure, clear skies. Temperatures in the 50s. We'd both pretended to believe it. The first 4 miles were easy conversation. Rowan talked about the girl he'd gone climbing with twice. Nice, funny, great belayer, but no spark. I told him about the guy from my printmaking class who kept texting me heart eyes emojis and then canceling plans. Rowan's jaw had tightened. When I mentioned it, just for a second, but I told myself I imagined it. You deserve someone who shows up, he said, kicking a pinnacone down the trail. Someone who doesn't make you guess. I'm pretty sure that person doesn't exist. He glanced sideways at me. Maybe you're looking in the wrong places. There it was again, that current under his words, humming like a live wire. I swallowed and changed the subject to whether mountain goats were judging our pace. They definitely were. By midday, we reached Lake Vivian, a sheet of impossible turquoise ringed by larch on fire with autumn. We dropped packs on a slab of granite and ate peanut butter tortillas while dragonflies stitched the air above the water. Rowan lay back, arms behind his head, shirt riding up just enough to reveal the sharp cut of his hip bones and the thin line of hair disappearing beneath his waistband. I looked away so fast I nearly gave myself whiplash. This is what I needed, he said quietly. No clients asking why their logo needs to pop more. No parents asking when I'm going to settle down and get a real job. Just this. I knew exactly what he meant. My graphic design gigs paid the rent, but they didn't stop my mom from forwarding me engagement announcements like subtle grenades, or from asking, every Sunday dinner, if I'd met any nice girls lately. I'd stopped correcting her years ago. It was easier to let her hope. Rowan rolled onto his side, propping his head on one hand. Sunlight slid over the freckles on his shoulder. Can I ask you something? Shoot. Why do you let her think you're still looking for the future, Mrs. Kaplan? The question hit like cold water. I opened my mouth, closed it again, because it's complicated. He waited. He was good at that, sitting in silence until you filled it. I don't know how to tell her I gestured vaguely, like the word might materialize if I waved my hand hard enough. Gay, he supplied, soft. Hearing it out loud from him made my lungs forget how to work. Yeah, that. Rowan nodded like I'd said the sky was blue. She loves you, Eli. She'll come around. She'll sound awfully sure. He paused. I came out to my dad last year, remember? He cried, but not for the reason I thought. He was scared for me. It took him 6 months, but now he asks if I'm bringing anyone to Thanksgiving. Progress. I stared at him. He never told me it went okay. You never asked? His voice was gentle, but there was something careful in it, too. I figured when you were ready you'd say something. The wind moved through the larch, needles hissing like secrets. I wanted to ask why it mattered. To him so much, why he looked like he was holding his breath, but thunder cracked across the ridge before I could. We both looked west. A wall of black clouds was eating the sky, moving faster than weather had any right to move. That wasn't in the forecast, Rowan muttered, already on his feet. We packed in 30 seconds flat. The temperature plummeted. The wind turned mean. By the time we hit the trail again, the first fat drops were hitting our jackets. Then the sky unzipped and it wasn't rain anymore. It was a deluge, cold and sideways. Turning the trail into a stream, we need to get below tree line, Rowan shouted over the roar. But Osgard Pass was still 2 miles above us. A 2,200-foot climb over loose scree and boulders the size of refrigerators. Going up was suicide? Going back meant descending a waterfall we'd just climbed. Lightning forked overhead, close enough that the hair on my arms stood up. There. Rowan pointed to a stand of old-growth hemlock, clinging to the slope. We stumbled off trail, boots sliding in mud, and ducked under the densest canopy we could find. It wasn't much, branches whipping like they wanted us gone. But it was something. We crouched there, backs against a trunk, sharing the meager shelter of a single emergency blanket that did nothing against the wind. Rain hammered the leaves above us, dripping through in cold rivulets down our necks. My teeth started chattering. Rowan shifted closer until our shoulders touched. You okay? Peachy. He laughed, a short exhale that fogged between us. Liar. Silence stretched, broken only by the storm. I could feel his body heat through 2 soaked layers, steady, alive. My heart was hammering so hard I was sure he could hear it. Eli, he said, so quietly I almost missed it the first time. Yeah, I need to tell you something. And if you hate me after, we'll pretend I never said it, okay? I turned my head. His face was inches away, raindrops clinging to his lashes, mouth trembling. Not from cold. I've been in love with you for 4 years, he said. Maybe longer. I don't know when it stopped being just friends and turned into this. But I'm tired of pretending it didn't. The world narrowed to the sound of rain and the thud of my pulse in my ears. I thought if I dated enough people, it would go away, he went on, voice cracking. It didn't. It got worse. And I'm sorry if this ruins everything. But we might freeze to death tonight, and I couldn't. I kissed him. I don't know who moved first. Maybe both of us. 1 second, there was 2 inches of freezing air between us. The next, his mouth was on mine. Cold lips and hot breath, and 6 years of wanting crashing together like the storm overhead. He tasted like rain and gummy worms and everything I'd never let myself imagine. His hands found my face, thumbs brushing my cheeks, and I made a sound I didn't know I could make. When we pulled apart, foreheads still touching, he laughed, shaky and disbelieving. So, not hating me? Shut up, I whispered, and kissed him again. The storm raged for hours. We stayed under that tree, trading kisses that started careful and turned desperate. Hands slipping under wet shirts because we needed skin like we needed oxygen. At some point, the thunder moved east, and the rain softened to a steady whisper. The temperature kept dropping. We can't stay here, Rowan murmured against my neck. Hypothermia is no joke. There was an old ranger cabin 2 miles down valley he remembered from the map. Maybe abandoned, maybe not, but it had a roof. We could make it if we moved now. We hiked through the dark with headlamps cutting tunnels in the mist, holding hands when the trail allowed it, like if we let go, the storm might change its mind and take one of us. My legs were jelly, lungs burning. But every time I stumbled, Rowan was there, steady, murmuring stupid encouragements that made me laugh and want to cry at the same time. The cabin was unlocked. A single room with a rusty wood stove and a pile of split alder someone had left behind years ago. We built a fire with shaking hands, stripped off wet layers, and hung them like prayer flags around the stove. Then we crawled into the single sleeping bag we'd zipped together. Skin to skin because it was the only way to get warm, we told ourselves. Liar. I thought again as Rowan pulled me against his chest, legs tangling, breath warm against my temple. Hey, he whispered into the dark. Still okay? I pressed my face into the curve of his neck. Better than okay. Outside, the storm finally spent itself. Inside, the fire popped and settled. Somewhere in the night, I felt his fingers trace the line of my spine like he was memorizing it. 6 years, I said, voice rough. We're idiots, he huffed a laugh. Yeah, but we're here now. Morning came pale and cold. The world washed clean. Snow dusted the meadow outside the cabin door, larch needles glowing like torches against it. We drank terrible instant coffee and shared the last of the gummy worms, trading kisses that tasted like artificial cherry and a future neither of us had dared to sketch before. The hike out took all day. We held hands the whole way. Some moments change everything. 1. Storm that rolls in faster than expected. 1 confession under dripping hemlock branches. 1 kiss that tastes like coming home. I got lost in the mountains with my best friend and I never wanted to be found again. The rain came down like the sky had been holding its breath for years and finally let go. Alex and I had been hiking the ridgeline trail above Lake Moraine for 3 hours when the storm hit. 1 minute the sky was the color of tarnished silver. The next, it was black and furious. We'd done this trail a dozen times together over the last decade we'd known each other, but never in weather like this. Never when the map app on my phone showed nothing but a spinning wheel and the trail. Markers had vanished under sheets of water. We ran half blind, hands linked so we wouldn't lose each other. My boots slipped on pine needles, turned to slime. Alex's longer stride kept him half a step ahead, pulling me along like he always had. Ever since college, when he dragged me out of my dorm room and into the life I actually wanted, we burst into a clearing I didn't recognize and stopped hunting. The rain hammered the hood of my jacket so hard I could barely hear myself think. There, Alex shouted over the roar, pointing. A cabin? Small, leaning slightly. The kind of place you only find when you're too lost to be picky. The door hung open, swaying in the wind like an invitation. We didn't hesitate. Inside smelled of old wood smoke and mouse nests, but it was dry. We stood dripping onto the warped floorboards, breathing hard, watching lightning strobe through the single grimy window. Alex laughed first. That low, surprised sound he makes when the universe pulls something ridiculous. Of course, there's a creepy abandoned cabin. Classic horror movie shit. Shut up, I said, but I was smiling. We're alive. That's what matters. He pushed wet dark hair off his forehead and looked at me. Really looked. The way he hadn't since the night senior year when we'd gotten drunk on cheap vodka and he'd stolen from his roommate and almost kissed on the roof of the humanities building. We'd pretended it never happened. 10 years of pretending. I turned away first, scanning the room. 1 iron bed frame, no mattress. A table missing a leg. A stone fireplace with a stack of split pine that looked like it had been waiting for us since the Nixon administration. We should get a fire going, I said, and get out of these clothes before we freeze. Alex raised an eyebrow. You planning to warm me with your body heat, Jamie? Dream on, Harper? But my voice cracked on his last name, the one I'd used like armor for years. We worked in silence after that, the way we always had when things got heavy. He coaxed flame from damp kindling while I hunted for anything dry we could use as blankets. I found a cedar chest in the corner, hinges screaming as I forced it open. Inside, 2 wool army blankets that smelled like mothballs and a lifetime ago. And miracle of miracles, a half-full bottle of something amber. I held it up. Either this is very good whiskey or very bad moonshine. Alex grinned. Only one way to find out. We stripped down to underwear, without ceremony. The way guys who've shared locker rooms and hostel bunks and too many near-death experiences are supposed to be able to do. Except I'd never seen Alex like this, firelight licking over the long lines of him. The scar on his ribs from when we'd tried and failed to surf in Costa Rica. The way his boxer briefs clung because everything was soaked. I wrapped myself in a blanket and sat on the hearth, trying not to stare. Failing. He handed me the bottle first. The whiskey burned clean all the way down. Outside, the storm kept trying to tear the roof off. Inside, the fire crackled and something shifted, slow and inevitable as tectonic plates. Alex sat beside me, close enough that our shoulders touched. Remember the night we met? Freshman orientation. You told me my shoes were tragically heterosexual. You were wearing boat shoes. With socks. It was a hate crime. I laughed, and it came out shaky. You spent the next 4 years trying to fix my wardrobe. 4 years trying to fix you, he said quietly, and failing spectacularly. The fire popped. Sparks flew up the chimney like they were trying to escape. Alex, Jamie. We said each other's names at the same time, then stopped. The air between us felt suddenly too small. He tried again. I need to say something. And if I don't say it now, I'm going to lose my nerve, and we'll both die old and full of regret, and I refuse to let that happen. My heart was hammering so hard I could feel it in my teeth. Okay, I've been in love with you since the night you cried in my car because your dad said he was disappointed you were gay. His voice was steady, but his hands shook. Since you let me hold you until you stopped shaking, since you fell asleep with your head on my shoulder, and I sat there for 3 hours. Scared to move because I didn't want to lose the weight of you. I couldn't breathe. I told myself it was enough to be your friend, he went on, that I could live on the scraps of you. And God, Jamie, the scraps were still the best thing in my life, but I'm tired of starving. The blanket slipped off my shoulder. I didn't fix it. Say something, he whispered. I thought it was just me, I said. The words felt ripped out of me. All these years? Every time you dated someone, I wanted to die a little. Every time I brought someone around, I was hoping you'd be jealous. Hoping you'd finally see me. He made a sound like I'd punched him. I was so scared, I said. You're everything. If I lost you, you'd never lost me. You couldn't. He reached out slow enough that I could have stopped him. I didn't. His palm cupped my cheek, thumb tracing the line of my jaw like he was memorizing it. I'm right here. Ben right here. The kiss wasn't gentle. 10 years of wanting exploded between us, messy and desperate and perfect. He tasted like whiskey and rain and every almost weed collected. My hands found his hair still damp, curling at the ends the way it did when he let it grow too long between cuts. He groaned into my mouth and pulled me back against the hearth, blanket falling away completely. We learned each other by firelight. Learned that Alex says my name like a prayer when he's close. That he's sensitive, just below his hip bones. That he laughs breathlessly when I kiss the hollow of his throat. That he watches my face like he's trying to burn the sight into his memory forever. He learned that I make small, helpless sounds when he uses his teeth. That I cling to his shoulders like he's the only solid thing in the world. That I've wanted this so long, it feels like coming home and falling apart at the same time. There was no rush. We had waited a decade. We could take all night mapping the country of each other's skin. Later, much later. Tangled in both blankets and limbs, the fire burned down to embers. Alex traced idle patterns on my back. So, he said, voice rough from shouting my name into my shoulder, 10 years. 10 years, I agreed. Think we can make up for lost time? I turned to look at him. His face was softer in the dying light, younger somehow. Like the weight of pretending had finally slid off his shoulders. I think, I said carefully, that we've got the rest of our lives to try. He smiled, slow and devastating. I liked the sound of that. Outside, the rain began to ease, turning from roar to whisper. Somewhere in the dark, the trail was waiting to take us home, but we stayed where we were. Wrapped around each other in an abandoned ranger's cabin that would never be abandoned in our memories. Listening to the storm fade and the world remake itself around the shape of us. Finally honest. When morning came, pale and startled through the window. We dressed slowly in clothes, stiff with dried mud and rainwater. The sky was washed clean, ridiculous, impossible blue. Alex shouldered his pack and held out his hand. Ready? He took it. His fingers laced through mine like they'd been designed to fit there. Been ready for 10 years, I said. We walked out into the newborn day together, no longer lost. The first time I met Liam Harper, we were 19 and drunk on cheap vodka in the basement of some off-campus house. He was wearing a ridiculous plaid shirt and arguing with a philosophy major about whether free will was real. I remember thinking two things. One, this guy was never going to shut up. And two, I kind of hoped he never would. 12 years later, we were still best friends. We had survived college, grad school, my disastrous almost marriage to a woman named Claire, Liam coming out at 25. My own quieter realization that followed 2 years after that, and the slow, careful rebuilding of a life where I finally admitted I wasn't as straight as I'd spent decades insisting. Through all of it, Liam was the constant. The one who showed up with takeout when my dad died. The one who let me crash on his couch for 3 months after the breakup with Claire. The one who never asked why I flinched every time someone used the word roommate to describe us, even though we'd been sharing walls and sometimes. In moments I refused to examine too closely. A bed after too many drinks for nearly a decade. We told ourselves it was fine. We were fine. Best friends didn't need more than that. Then came the weekend in the Adirondacks. We'd planned the trip for months, Liam's idea. Of course, we need to unplug, he'd said. No cell service, no work emails, just us and 40 miles of trail. I should have known better. Liam's plans had a way of going gloriously, catastrophically sideways. The first day was perfect. October in upstate New York is ridiculous, leaves like fire, air sharp enough to make you feel alive. We hiked hard. Bickering about music, he still insisted that early 2000s pop punk was a personality, and whether bears could actually smell fear. By the time we made camp that night, we were exhausted, sunburned, stupidly happy. The storm hit on day 2. It rolled in fast. Thunder so loud it felt like the mountain itself was cracking open. We'd taken a shortcut Liam swore he'd read about on some obscure hiking forum. By the time we realized the trail had vanished under ferns and fallen birch, the sky had gone bruised purple and the rain came down in sheets. Fuck, Liam said, which was generous. I had moved past words into pure animal panic. We ran. Branches whipped our faces. My pack felt like it was full of bricks. The map was useless ink, bleeding into watercolor smears. Lightning struck so close, I smelled ozone and burnt pine. And then, through the roar of wind and water, I saw it. A hunting cabin, half collapsed, but still standing. Smoke curling weakly from a rusted chimney pipe. We stumbled inside like drowning men reaching shore. The place smelled of damp wood and old coffee. There was a pot-bellied stove, a single cot with a Motheton blanket, and a stack of ancient Field and Stream magazines. Liam got a fire going with shaking hands while I peeled off my soaked shirt and tried not to think about how cold I was. Guess we're staying the night, he said. Voice too bright. Guess we are. We hung our clothes by the fire and sat wrapped in the single blanket, shoulders touching because there wasn't room not to. The storm screamed outside. Inside, the only sounds were the crackle of wood and our breathing. I don't know who started talking first. Maybe it was me, saying something stupid about how Claire used to hate camping. Maybe it was Liam, voice low, admitting he'd never brought anyone up here before because he wanted it to be ours. The conversation turned the way rivers do slow at first, then sudden and deep. I used to think, he said, staring into the fire, that if I just never said it out loud, it wouldn't matter. That wanting you was like background noise, something I could live with. My heart was trying to punch through my ribs. Liam, no, let me finish. Because I'm fucking terrified, Alex. I've been terrified for years. That if I told you I've been in love with you since we were 21, and you looked at me like I was the only person in the room, you'd, I don't know, leave, laugh, something. The silence after that was huge. I turned to look at him. Rainwater still clung to his lashes. There was a cut on his cheek from a branch, a thin line of blood I hadn't noticed before. He looked wrecked and beautiful and like home. I wouldn't have laughed, I said. My voice cracked. I would have kissed you. I just didn't know I was allowed. He made the sound half laugh, half saw band. Then we were kissing like the world was ending outside, and this was the only solid thing left. It wasn't gentle. 12 years of wanting poured out in teeth and tongue and the scrape of stubble. We ended up on the floor because the cot was too small, blanket kicked aside. Skin against skin, like we were trying to crawl inside each other. After we lay tangled and shaking, listening to the storm quiet into something gentler. I'm still scared, I whispered against his neck. Me too, he said. But I'm more scared of not trying. Morning came soft and gold. The world outside looked brand new, every leaf dripping diamonds, the air so clean it hurt to breathe. We found the trail 20 minutes from the cabin, clear as anything. We'd been half a mile from it the whole time. Liam took my hand as we walked. His palm was calloused from years of guitar strings and climbing walls and every stupid thing we'd done together, so he said, when we get back to civilization, what happens? We figure it out, I said. Together. He stopped walking and kissed me right there in the middle of the trail, morning light slanting through the trees like a blessing. The hike out took all day. We moved slowly, stopping to kiss against pines, to laugh at how dramatically we'd panicked. To promise things we were still too raw to say properly. When we reached the car, our phones exploded missed calls from worried friends, texts from my sister demanding proof of life. None of it felt urgent. On the drive home, Liam reached over and laced our fingers together on the gear shift. Boyfriend, he said, testing the word. The sound of it made something warm and terrifying bloom in my chest. Yeah, I said. Boyfriend. We didn't tell anyone at first. We wanted time to learn the shape of this new thing between us, without an audience. There were nights on the couch watching terrible action movies, my head in his lap while he played with my hair. There were mornings waking up tangled together in his bed, our bed. Eventually, and realizing I couldn't remember what it felt like to sleep alone, there were fights too. God, the fights. About whose turn it was to buy groceries. About how Liam still left wet towels on the bathroom floor. About the way I shut down when work got bad and forgot to tell him I needed him. Normal, messy couple shit that somehow felt sacred because it was ours. His mom cried when we told her happy tears. Mostly, though, there was a moment where she looked at me and said, very quietly, you break his heart, Alex, and I break your legs. I believed her. My sister just smirked and said, took you long enough. Year later, we went back to the Adirondacks. Same trail, same weekend in October. This time, we had proper gear, a reservation at a real campsite, and absolutely no intention of getting lost. We found the cabin again. Someone had fixed it up, placed the roof, left a guest book on the table. Liam pulled a small wooden box from his pack and set it down like it weighed 1,000 pounds. Alex, he said, and his voice shook. Inside the box was a ring, simple white gold, engraved with coordinates. The exact spot where we'd stood the year before, soaked to the bone and finally brave. I spent 12 years thinking I had to choose between loving you safely and loving you completely, he said. I don't want to choose anymore. Marry me? I cried so hard I could barely get the word out. Yes, God, yes. We got married the following spring in the backyard of the house we'd bought together, a small ceremony. Too many people, Liam's mom sobbing into a handkerchief while my sister gave a speech that made everyone cry harder. We danced to the stupid pop-punk song we'd argued about on that first hike. And when he kissed me under strings of fairy lights, I thought, this is what getting found feels like. Sometimes, late at night, I still pull out my phone and read. The note I wrote to my younger self the week after the storm, you. Think the scariest thing is losing him if you say it out. Loud. But the real terror is spending your whole life standing next to the person you love. Most in pretending that's enough. Say it, risk it. Get lost if you have to. The trail always leads you home if you're brave enough to follow it. I never sent the note. I didn't need to. Liam was in the kitchen, humming off-key while making coffee, wearing my old college sweatshirt and nothing else. I walked up behind him, wrapped my arms around his waist, pressed my face between his shoulder blades. "Hey, husband," I said. "Hey, yourself," he answered, turning in my arms. "What's up?" "Nothing," I said. "Just glad we got lost." He smiled that slow, crooked smile that had been mine for 12 years and would be mine for 50 more. "Me too, Alex. Me too."